we asked them if they could answer how they would improve the foods in the school, and many of them asked them if they liked the food at Manuel Arts High School, and most of the people said no. 66% said no. When you asked if they would explain why, many of them said that there was no good food choices and that the line is too crowded. There's not enough time to get the food they want. And there's pizza every day, there's no vegetarian options, and some people said they never tried it or it wasn't appealing to them. When we asked them how much time they spent in line, many of them said, 70% of them said they spent 10 minutes or more in line. And when we asked them if they had enough time by the time they got to the front of the line to get the food that they wanted, 76% said yeah, said they didn't have enough time. And when we asked them how many would eat if they would put a salad bar in their school, 73% said yes. When we asked them if they knew who to talk to about the cafeteria food, only 11% said yes.
We have just showed you our perspectives on school meals based on what's going on in each of our own communities. As you can see, there's a variety of school meals. The thing we need to work on range from renovating the cafeteria to make them more appealing to students, which would bring them back as opposed to allowing them to go out to lunch, to improving the quality of the school meals as in Southern California. And the youth board as a whole have been working on these issues throughout the years. For example, in Oakland, the youth board members are working on selecting the healthiest options for the school meals, and they have a list of foods that they can choose from, and the youth board members there are working on that. And we are also working with adults in our own communities to implement these changes, and we suggest the school districts across California to address these issues as well. Thank you very much.
Outstanding panel. Thank you. Right from the front line. So we appreciate that perspective as well as that of the food service manager. So a lot of challenges in front of us. I think the point that was made by the last panel of our representatives from the students of California is the idea of having an appealing environment as well as having the good meals, and then doing some kinds of surveys. I think the idea of getting surveys about what students want and like and what kind of feedback you can get in that survey process to get a buy-in or an acceptance of the more nutritious choices, those are very good ideas. Your survey from Manuel Arts High School indicated that kids that you surveyed there would like the salad bar as an option or a choice that many would embrace. I think you said something upwards of 70%.
Yeah, because most of the food that we receive is either we get hamburgers, pizza, and nachos. That's the three things that we get the most in our school. We hardly see any salads because they make 100 salads for the school, and it's about 3,000 students in our school, and there's not enough to go around for everybody. And when we asked them if that would be a good choice for the school, a lot of them said yes, because they would have an opportunity to eat fresh fruits and vegetables.
Representative from the UC Cooperative Extension mentioned that they've tried different places where they've done surveys of what students would like to eat, and then actually implemented it and found that there was a large increase in student choices towards the healthy meals. But they would move the same choices to another school, but without the survey or without the buy-in process, and the utilization was lower. So somehow that student involvement seems very important in terms of engaging students in ownership and direction for the changes. To any of the student panelists, what are recommendations you have for how students can organize that change, or how push the change? What are the steps you would take to get choices, either better lighting in the cafeteria or better decorations, or or the actual food choices? What are the steps, and how can more students in California be empowered to take those steps?
Well, last year, I was actually on an organization that was planning on renovating our school cafeteria. And we were thinking of maybe, since there's not enough light in the cafeteria at all, it's very dark, even at noon, and we were thinking maybe we can open up the curtains at least, or we have a lot of artists at our school, and students can easily come up with a mural to put on the walls, just, you know, like create a very comfortable area for students to eat. The ideal cafeteria would be like a lounge, sort of for students to hang out and eat, and just have like a very, you know, welcoming atmosphere instead of the cafeteria that we have now, which is very dark and it's cold, and I mean, you just don't, especially when we live in Santa Barbara, you want to enjoy the sunlight, you want to enjoy as much fun as you can, and the cafeteria really doesn't offer that. And definitely one thing we can do is to, you know, utilize all the artistic skills we have at school, and maybe we can
Who would you as a student individual, or as a group of same-minded students, who would you go to get that change, either at your school or Manual Arts or Ukiah? What would be the first person of authority who might make a difference in the direction you're wanting to go?
The art teacher at my school, I think they would be very happy to do something like that. Yeah, we had students before who did murals like for the Santa Barbara community and for the library, and students are participating in that. I think they would be very happy to help us with this.
Great, thank you. From Manual Arts, you?
How to bring more people to the cafeteria. It's kind of different in our school. It's not as much as the decorations, it's more as the food looks appealing to the students. The food doesn't look that appealing in our school, and as a result, not many students want to go to actually eat the food. So if they would improve the quality and the overall appearance of the food, then I think a lot more students would go and eat.
Any other answers? And then I want to ask our good food service managers, how should students, what would be the channels you would recommend students take to bring that kind of survey information to the attention of those who could make a difference? How can the information get to you, for instance, or to your own cafeteria?
Well, you know, I know one thing, and I know Linnell does this as well, and I believe my other two counterparts down there to do this. One thing that we do is we do a yearly food show. We invite the whole district, we market it, and we have the vendors come in with products that we will actually get surveys from the students. They get buy-in on the menus, and then those items then are incorporated into our menus. I think that's one way to look at things. The other thing that we have done is we've looked at our a la carte sales, and we're actually SB 12 compliant as of this year, even though we don't have to be until this coming summer. And we wanted to test and see how that effect would be with our students. And the first thing we did this summer was I took myself and our nutritionist and our buyer, and we went to Whole Foods, and we went over to Fresno State, where I used to be the director, and we looked at, I was trying to get them to say, just because we're in K through 12 doesn't mean we don't market foods like you would see, because I think on the behalf of our customer, which is our students, they know what they see in other areas, and if they can buy food on our campuses that looks like foods that they would get in other places, like a chef salad at Whole Foods in a clear container where you can see it versus a styrofoam bowl, I think, you know, we have to do a better job of marketing what we put out. I know Sanger does a great job of marketing some of their foods. I know Robert does a great job, Linnell as well, and I think if we can get together and you know, we share ideas, I think there's a way, and getting, you know, it's all about where the rubber meets the road, and you get that feedback from those students, they make it happen. I liked what they said about the atmosphere. I've come from an area where we've renovated a lot of dining halls, and I think the most important fact when you ever do a renovation, I think, you know, you go to your teacher, you go to the people that can look for funding facilities, but as you do it, you get student involvement, and you make it their identity, because if it's theirs, they'll take care of it.
Right. In Visalia, we do a food tasting every January, and we invite, right before we do our bids for the following year, and we invite about 50 junior high and high school age kids to come of various groups and taste about 40 or 50 new items. And it's a good time. We get some really honest feedback, and that's very important for us. And we did adopt about 20 new items this year after that tasting last year. Visite has also renovated all of their high school cafeterias over the last 5 years and added a lot of lighting, restaurant-style seating, and it's really made a difference. My cafeterias are full every day. But again, I have about 2,000 students on each high school campus, and I have seating for about 250 in that cafeteria, which is about this size. It's beautiful and it's full every day, but we have to have additional seating outside to service our kids too. And that costs about $350,000 per site to do that renovation. So it does take some capital to make that happen.
Well, this has been an excellent panel, and there's a lot to follow up on, and I'll ask a few questions if you can think about it and submit information back to the select committee so that we can incorporate it in our report to the other legislators. One would be, going back to one of the basics of your original presentation, I believe we need more money to meet the higher quality and the mix of foods we're talking about. So some greater understanding from you, and maybe this goes back to the Department of Education as well, and is how, and the USDA, how did we go from 11.5 cents in 1986 to only 15 cents last year? You know, what kind of arithmetic has been used to come up with these numbers, and why are we so far behind? You've partially answered it in your presentation there. The other thing that comes to mind is we should look at the State Allocation Board. I served on that. The voters just passed $10 billion to improve our schools, to construct new schools, but more importantly, I think, to renovate, modernize our existing campuses. So to what degree can we make the attractive food environment, the attractive school lunch place, a priority in the allocation board process? So I think we're going to look at that as a follow-up, and any ideas you have, food service managers or those who've tried to renovate your campuses, how easy was it to get the state to cooperate in releasing some of that money for modernization and rehab? And then finally, we'll look with you at how can we find more ways to do what is being done well in Visalia here in Fresno, to get more student input and surveys, and how do we let students know that they have a voice, that they can talk to the cafeteria manager, they can talk to the school principal, and ultimately even to the school board about changes that they would like to see in their district. So thanks again to this panel. Let's give them a round of applause for their excellent input. Thank you all. Now, we're pushing forward. That's what the agenda says. Adelante. We must go from identifying the problem to doing something about it. So we have ideas for pushing California forward. Dr. Pat Crawford, registered nurse, co-director, UC Berkeley Center for Weight and Health. We are glad to have Phyllis Branson-Paul back again from the Department of Education. Nell Grumbles, food service director. We just heard from her. She's back with more ideas. Ken Hecht, executive director for the California Food Policy Advocates, and Eddie Jessup, hunger and nutrition project coordinator for the Fresno Metro Ministry. So we got a little bit of a crowded forum there, but we'll make sure we get. Do we need another chair from my able staff to accommodate everybody? Welcome. Who would like to go first? Jumping right into moving forward. Dr. Crawford?
Okay, I'll begin. Thank you for inviting me. And I should also say, in addition to the co-director for the Center for Weight and Health at UC Berkeley, I'm also a cooperative extension nutrition specialist in the area of childhood obesity.
Recess, let's go.
Well, just 5 years before the National School Lunch Program began, we had the very first recommended dietary allowances where we learned what nutrients were needed. And we were able to prevent nutrient deficiencies over this last 60 years. We've done a phenomenal job. But only 40 years after that, in the 1980s, we learned that we had to make that 180-degree turn, that no longer was malnutrition and nutrient deficiency is the #1 problem, but obesity and chronic disease are, of course, the #1. And over the last 25 years, of course, childhood obesity has tripled. And what's disconcerting is that the gap in our knowledge and our practice is greater than ever. We now know so much about what children should eat, but we're not practicing it as well as we can. We know how important breakfast is, but fewer children are eating breakfast now than 25 years ago on a regular basis. We know how important calcium is, but fewer children are drinking milk. We know how important phytochemicals are and antioxidants to preventing cancer, but our children, only 4% are getting the recommended levels of fruits and vegetables. And potatoes are now half of all the vegetables consumed, not a vegetable known for its highest health benefits, a good vegetable, but we need more. So in every case, we can list snack foods and fiber and kinds of fats and trans fats. In every case, we know more than what we're doing for our children. Today, our children are getting 40% of their calories from added fats and sugars. And we just can't afford that with our lower calorie needs, as Phyllis pointed out. That high proportion is not acceptable. And the sad thing is, those at the highest nutritional risk are, of course, those who are at the lowest income levels, the most vulnerable members of our society. So just as we inoculate children for infectious disease, we have to think of this, the school lunch program, as a way of inoculating children against chronic disease problems. Now, can we rely on just the nutrition standards? We've done a good job in California in really putting our heads together and putting forth nutrition standards. But I'd like to make the point that we can't rely on that completely. For example, we know that carrots are very effective in preventing certain kinds of cancers. But when we go to take the most active antioxidant in carrot, the beta-carotene, out and put it in other foods and put it in pills, it's not effective. So foods are really key to this issue of childhood obesity. Another thing we can do, the processors can put in, they can reduce the fat, they can reduce the salt, they can reduce the sugar in various processed foods, but it doesn't make them healthier. It doesn't make them healthy foods. It may make them a bit healthier, but it doesn't make them healthy foods. Our children really deserve whole, fresh foods, and the student panel said it beautifully, and our surveys with students have said the same thing. The kids will eat it if we can provide fresh, wholesome food. That's what they're calling for. In fact, some of the foods that we're doing, because they're convenient and packaged and cheaper, some of the foods and some of the snack foods, they say, oh, it's too mushy, it's too squishy, So I think adults' perception has to change on what our kids really want, and amazingly, it's in line with what they really need. So I think it's our job to bring those two things together. Now, children who eat the school meals have better nutrition than those children who don't. So I'd like to say loud and clear that this is our most promising approach to prevention of obesity in California and the nation. So the goal of the California school meal programs is not just to nourish the students and to enable them to learn, but it is to help them establish lifelong healthy eating habits. And I think we often think that we're doing it when we're providing certain kinds of foods that we're tinkering with to make them more healthy. But then when they go out, they may have a food that's a little lower in fat and sugar or salt in the school menu. And then when they go out and buy that similar product, for example, a hot dog that is more nutritious in the school setting, we go out, buy one afterwards, and have it for dinner. It isn't of the same nutritional quality, but we haven't done much to work with the dietary habits. And that is clearly a problem with the obesity problem, is that we need to do our very best to see the school food program as providing this healthy, fresh food, as well as educating through that very availability. So the biggest challenge, of course, as everybody has said, is money, because this costs more. And we know that facilities are lacking, staff is lacking, training is lacking. But even the availability of the cheaper, convenient processed foods it is a real barrier to making this happen, because the other foods are there, and we think that this is what children really do prefer. The availability of snack foods. But in our pilot study with the LEAF study, the evaluation of Senate Bill 19 that we conducted with the Department of Education, we learned that kids who were interviewed really would move into the school meal program with the snack foods being removed from campuses. We actually anticipated we might see some boycotts or some, student protests, but amazingly, the kids were very willing and able to make that shift. So I think we need to give them more credit for making these decisions when we provide the kinds of foods that the children should be eating. So the innovative solutions, it goes right back to all of those disconnects with what we know and what we're doing, is to provide the whole grains in the school meal. We know now that that's important for obesity prevention. It's part of my pyramid and the dietary guidelines, and we have to figure out a better way to get those into the school meals. We have to figure out how to change the kinds of fats. The trans fats, of course, they're coming out of the packaged foods in the stores. We have to do the same thing in the schools, of course. We have to figure out how to present foods with less frying, because we're trying to teach the kids lifelong habits here. We have to figure out how to present and afford the fruit and vegetable options, and more is better. The guidelines have just increased the number that our children need, and so we have to be responsive to that. And there's many ways of getting these increased fruits and vegetables in, the healthy grab and go and the salad bars and the international market. We know, from the student surveys and the student, responses, we know how to do it. So it really is a challenge for all of us. So where to begin? I guess convening a panel, of food service folks, nutritionists, students, generating menus, recipes, and looking at the financial costs and providing the technical assistance and the training. Because I know that our best shot at reducing childhood obesity is right here in front of us at the school level. So we at the University of California and at Cooperative Extension really welcome the opportunity to work with you to make this a reality.
Thank you very much, Dr. Crawford. Appreciate those challenges as well as the idea of a panel or some kind of convening. And the Superintendent of Education has, Jeff McConnell's got a very good working group going. We need to look at how do we tie regional efforts into a statewide push. Phyllis, back to our good representative from the Department of Education, Phyllis Ramsey Paul.
In terms of what do we need to really move forward, it's fairly simple. We really think that the biggest challenge facing schools that's preventing them from moving forward is lack of money. In school nutrition, the axiom, you get what you pay for, is absolutely true. And everything we're talking about, there's another axiom, time is money. So, with 55% of what they're spending being labor, anything that requires more labor requires more money. In terms of overall cost increases, you certainly mentioned earlier, how did we get to the point that the state's contribution towards meals, what was in the 80s was 13 cents. If you put the 21 cents aside because we don't have money to pay at that level, it's 15 cents. That's about a 30% reduction in the real purchasing power of what we were providing in 1990. So we're asking schools to do more. Let's go get salad bars. Let's provide healthier food. Let's do more innovative food systems. And we're providing them at the state level less real money than we were in 1990. Certainly as a Department of Ed, Superintendent O'Connell really pushed for $70 million last year. Not only to give school districts the COLA, the cost of living adjustment, that they haven't received for 15 years. That's just absolutely critical, but to also restore some of the reimbursement that we used to give to pay the children who pay for their meals. So there's been a real debate about should we be tying additional nutrition standards to this influx of whether it's 38 million or 70 million. We believe, frankly, we already have. The legislature, Governor, Superintendent O'Connell, the School Nutrition Association pushed for SB 12 and 965. We have them. And those are the standards. Originally they were tied to money. They were, divorced from the money at some point on, but they cost money to implement, particularly for districts that have a fairly high proportion of free and reduced. You know, we can ask, do we tie additional academic standards to the COLA money that go to districts overall? No, we give them growth, we give them COLA, and then there are totally separate pots of money that go for when we want to move forward in terms of additional standards. We know healthier foods cost more. In terms of what do we need to really move forward, we certainly think that about $50 to $70 million to bring up the free and reduced and paid reimbursement to what it was in 1990 is key. We think some additional money for facilities. You know, we'd love to work with you with your work at the State Allocation Board. Superintendent O'Connell tried this year to get $100 million set aside to the Bond Act and was unsuccessful. Maybe we keep working now for getting that kind of a set aside in the Bond Act 2 years from now. But in terms of can we move forward even more, the answer is absolutely. We think above and beyond the retroactive COLA that school nutrition programs absolutely deserve, there's certainly things we can do to improve things even more. We believe the shape meal patterns are an absolutely solid structure. They're science-based, they have the built-in monitoring and accountability, and we think they offer the kind of model that we could use that would be similar to how we improved academic achievement in California. Rigorous standards, money to districts to help implement, professional development, and then monitoring accountability. So we believe implementing SHAPE statewide with some additional resources would really help move things overall.
There's no free nutritious lunch. It's another axiom.
I used to say there's no free lunch, and then Ken Heck said, please don't say that, because there really is.
Where? Well, we won't go into that. Maybe Ken will. All right. Well, Linnell, do you want to add? The team, Linnell and Paul, are back as our food services directors.
Sure. Yeah, we kept it to one slide once again. I think Phyllis really touched the main nerve there is money that makes these things happen. Some of the things that we're doing, I mentioned how we're presenting our a la carte items, but we're also, you start to look at where kids eat, what they're eating. We're piloting actually at one of our high schools right now a salad bar / sandwich bar where you actually get the salad or you get the sandwich and then you top it yourself, and it's kind of like, in a sense, it's make your own salad, make your own sandwich, and we're getting great feedback from the students on that. It's a self-serve. We're using commodity cheese, so that helps the cost, but the cost of that is more than what the plate cost is for a regular meal, and those are the kind of things that we will continue to do, and we will continue to try to push these things and be as innovative as we can within our cost structure, but we can't overemphasize what that does to our costs and the additional money that we could use to make things even better. We mentioned taste testing and food shows. I think it's vital to get parent and community involvement. I talked about earlier about education. I think we can be part of the education process. My staff probably gets tired of me talking about the kiwi story, but we did a Harvest of the Month, and educated students on kiwis in a classroom, and then we as a food service department supported the kiwi and served it at lunch, and the class that got the instruction on and it talked about the kiwi ate the kiwi, the class that didn't talk about it didn't eat it. So I think there's an important component there that, once again, how it all works together, I think that's for all of us to decipher, but I think that's an important thing to mention as well, that it's full circle. It's food service, it's physical activity, it's parents, it's all of us working together for the same mission. There's school gardens that are going on in districts, there's farm to school. Others do it differently than others. I know as a large district, we'll be perfectly honest, our farm to school isn't what people would perceive farm to school with, but we can't call 100 farmers for our 100 schools. So what we do is any local growers that work with us, we have them contact our distributors and we let them be a co-op for them. You know, when you talk to local growers, some of them, they don't have the overhead or the funding to get trucks and to get warehousing, to get the things that they need to set up a co-op where they have one distribution center. So I think as larger districts, we can actually help them out, have them work with our distributors, and let our distributors be a co-op with them. The other issue, though, as the student stated, is sometimes the fruit's out of season. So you try to push what you've got in the valley. We're the heart of the ag country here. Again, I've got Linnell and two of our counterparts here. We're great resources for each other. I'm very proud to be a part of this new K-12 family, and the talent that is in this valley as far as directors go. I think we do a good job of trying to think outside the box and how we can get those things forward. Once again, I mentioned collaborating with local producers and manufacturers. SHAPE's been mentioned before. We use SHAPE. I know most of us do. Fresh Start program as well. So.
Great.
Can I go on to the next slide? We have a
Yes,
couple other suggestions. I agree with Phyllis that the additional funding is absolutely necessary just for status quo where we are right now. And any further standards or any changes that are made need to be done with food service professionals included in the decision making, making sure that districts of all sizes are represented, because although Paul and I have a great resource, lots of resources at our disposal in larger districts, many districts in California are small, less than 3,000, 1,000 students, and there may not even be a director, just a food service manager. Lots of additional local assistance is absolutely needed, and funding for that for regional consultants and assistance at the local level is really needed because of all those small school districts. Also, funding for assessment and evaluation of local wellness policies, which are very important in our districts for moving this ahead and garnering support from other areas such as health services and the curriculum side of the school. Also, funding for promotion and marketing for nutrition and physical activity and healthy lifestyles. One more. New nutrition standards for salad bar options. It's very difficult for a salad bar to meet the calorie level and nutrition standards as they sit right now. Funding for the increased cost of healthy foods, prepackaged produce, as Paul was talking about earlier. A salad put in a beautiful black plastic container. That container costs about 12 cents. That adds to the cost of the food item, whereas maybe the styrofoam we're using right now is only 3 or 4 cents. So that part of marketing, adds to the per meal food cost of an item. Any further standards that are brought forth need to be science-based, cost-effective, and achievable at the local level by every school district, as well as appealing to kids. Another important issue.
Excellent. Thank you. We're going to have some questions afterwards, but let's hear from the rest of the panel.